Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer recently appointed a Council on Climate Solutions to develop a plan to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050 for the state of Michigan. But what's that going to take? And how are our streets and our cities and our transit systems, how can they be involved in that solution? With us today is Narayanan, who is the executive director of Our Streets Minneapolis, and also a member of the Minnesota Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council. He has worked to help the Minnesota Department of Transportation figure out how they can sustainably tackle the question of climate change. So welcome, Ash. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Megan. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Our Streets Minneapolis.
Our Streets Minneapolis is a local nonprofit based out of the Cedar Riverside neighborhood in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We started as the Minneapolis Bicycle Coalition back in 2009, and a lot of the organizing work that we did has resulted in Minneapolis today being ranked as one of the best cities for biking in the United States today. About back in 2017, we also wanted to affirm our commitment to people walking and rolling as well. Rolling being people in wheelchairs or people using things like electric scooters, and we changed our name to Our Streets Minneapolis. And today our work is focused on making the city a place where anybody can walk, bike, or roll easily and comfortably.
Wonderful. That sounds like some great work. But how does climate change fit in that? How did you end up on a Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council? How do you feel that the transportation realm and the walking and biking realm matters to the issue of climate change?
Today, our transportation choices are the leading driver of climate change in the United States. So a few years ago, the electricity generation sector was the largest source of carbon pollution, and today that's no longer the case. Transportation is the biggest reason we are headed towards climate disaster. And within transportation, it is how much we drive that is accelerating this climate crisis. We have been driving more and more as a country, for decades now, and a lot of that is because of how we've chosen to make our transportation investments, which is mostly to prioritize the movement and storage of cars. And so today, we think that in order to tackle the climate crisis, we really need to think beyond cars in our transportation system and really look at various different modes of getting around that don't bring us to the precipice of climate disaster.
Here in the Motor City, we definitely see that challenge a lot, and there seems to be a lot of focus on electric vehicles as being the solution, and that as long as we have renewable energy and electric vehicles, that's going to somehow solve the climate crisis. Why? That's certainly an important part of it, but why do you feel we need more than just EVs?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Megan. Electric vehicles and electrification of our transportation system is a huge part of the solution for the climate crisis, but it is clear that it is not anywhere near enough in terms of what it'll actually take. Even using models from various different sources, most recently from the Rocky Mountain Institute, even with aggressive electrification, with a whole number of new electric cars being sold on our streets by in about a decade, we will not be anywhere close to getting the carbon reductions we need. And so another big piece of the solution is reducing how much we drive, reducing what we call vehicle miles traveled. And the only way to do that is to restructure our cities and our communities so that we can access everything we need, our jobs, opportunities, shopping, school, without driving, and also being able to walk and bike and take transit to all these places.
So how is the Minnesota Department of Transportation starting to tackle this challenge, and what's the role of the stack?
Minnesota Department of Transportation, to their credit, are also interested in solving the climate crisis. They recognize their role as the largest agency in the state, making big transportation decisions that affects everybody in the state of Minnesota. And so they put together a group of people, people from the nonprofit sector like me, people from the for-profits, elected officials, and chaired by the Commissioner of the Transportation, called Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council. This is a council that is working to provide the department with recommendations on all the different things they can do to reduce carbon emissions from the transportation sector and build a more equitable world in the process as well. The council is divided into two work groups as of now. One is called the Fueling and Powering Work Group that mostly deals with electrification, and the other one is called the Vehicle Miles Travel Reduction Work Group that I co-chair.
Excellent. It sounds like Michigan might be able to learn a lot. Our governor, as I said, just appointed a council on climate solutions, and there's going to be a subcommittee on transportation and mobility, but we'll definitely have to work with them to make sure that they recognize that VMT reduction is such an important component. So what type of suggestions do you have for us in Michigan? What can we learn from the efforts that Minnesota's been attempting, what you guys are recommending, or maybe what you guys haven't yet done as well as you think should be done?
So our group has come up with 3 broad recommendations, and I just want to talk a little bit about the approach we took. We looked at it from a public health perspective, and the approach we took is understanding what things are happening today that are causing harm, and trying to stop those things from happening. The second was, what are things that we can do to do good? And so we kind of phrased our recommendations in that way. But the biggest thing that we found that we were doing to cause harm was, one, continuing to expand highways. We've expanded highways as a solution for congestion for decades now, and we have not got results. We've seen congestion go up, we've seen pollution go up, we've seen particulate matter emissions go up, and the climate crisis is getting worse. And so our first recommendation was that we should stop expanding highways as a solution for congestion. And then there was another great harm being done in terms of the effects that highway expansions have on communities of color, especially Black communities, where in the 60s, when the interstate system was being created, as in Detroit, as in Minneapolis, Black communities were selectively targeted for those highways to cut through, destroying Black wealth and homes in the process. So that was another reason we put that strongly in our recommendations. The other thing we asked for was the department to set itself a VMT reduction goal. We based this off of what the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul had done. They have strong climate goals, and we asked that the department set itself a goal of 20% VMT reduction by 2050. And then finally, we also asked that existing right-of-way in Minneapolis that is owned by the Department of Transportation be converted to move away from single occupancy vehicles and instead be used for things like public transit, and also to create better connections for biking and walking throughout areas that they own.
Excellent. Yeah, that definitely seems like some not only some very smart policy recommendations, but some very clear messaging as well. Sometimes things like VMT reduction sounds weird and complicated, but stop making the problem worse by widening highways seems very smart, and stop destroying Black communities while you're at it, another key challenge, but then also to set a goal. Now, was there a specific reason for a 20% reduction? How do you?
Yeah, we struggled a little bit with this. We don't have very good numbers to really understand how much VMT reduction is required, but we based it off of what contemporary cities in Minneapolis have put as their goals. So the city of Minneapolis, what cities in Minnesota have been doing. So the city of Minneapolis and city of St. Paul have goals in the 20% reduction range, and we based it off of that. We see it as a starting point, and we ask that MnDOT do their own work to understand what really it will take to get us to zero carbon emissions.
That's at least a good direction to be taking. Let's make sure we're not increasing vehicle miles traveled as generally has happened over the last 50 years. So stabilizing and then doing some decreasing is absolutely important. So it sounds like you guys are doing great work. We certainly will touch base with you as some of these efforts move forward, and hopefully we can convince some of our leaders in Michigan to embrace some of those great ideas as well. So thank you so much, Ash, for joining us. Any final thoughts or suggestions?
No, I'm so glad that this work is getting off the ground in Michigan as well. Carbon emissions are a global problem, and so every state, I think, has to do their part. And so I'm wishing you all the best as you get started, and glad to have your leadership in Michigan as well.
And if we can convince the Motor City and the state that put the world on wheels that maybe we don't have to drive everywhere all the time, then no one else can complain they can't do it. So again, thank you, Ash. And I always want to thank our true members. This series of Tapping into Transit interviews and videos is made possible by the members of True who make our work possible. So if you're a member, thank you very much. If not, please consider joining at DetroitTransit.org. And you can follow both True at Detroit Transit and Ash, your Twitter was Our Streets.
Our Streets MPLS.
Excellent. Great ways to follow exciting work happening in both states. So thanks so much. Have a great day.